This is a bonus podcast of the Metal Guys Talk Business, talking about recruitment, between the difference between a passive candidate and an active candidate.
The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is brought to you by Comerford Group, a specialist recruitment agency working in the metal, manufacturing and engineering sectors. In June 2024 this year, I was with NAS, which is one of the steel associations in the metal sector. I was invited to speak at their summer gathering and give like a short 15-minute presentation. So what we thought we'd do, because obviously there were people at the event, but there'd be plenty of people that weren't. So the plan is to talk through that speech today, but obviously get Mike interjecting. I reckon he'll just keep interjecting anyway.
Maybe.
And you'll do more of it as we go. That's the plan.
I'm not going to inject.
Okay. So, slide one. It's a very unusual way of doing one of these podcasts, but the talk that I gave at NAS started with the different mindsets. I think when companies are hiring, you have to realise that there's two mindsets of candidates. You've got passive candidates and you've also got active candidates, and how a recruitment process works for both types can actually be quite different. And then I'll finish that speech off with an example of a particular close that you might want to use when you're looking to offer or hire a member of staff. So,
should we tell them what a passive candidate is?
That's slide two. Right, I'm on it now, yeah, here we go.
All right.
So slide two, there's two types of candidates. First type of candidate is active candidates. An active candidate is someone who is out of work. They may have been made redundant, or they're just frustrated with their current role, so they're actively looking for a new role. And I targeted a couple of things here that normally it's due to frustrations, money, changing management, missing out on internal promotions is one that we see a lot, or just seeing jobs advertised that might be on more money than they're currently on, or with better prospects elsewhere. So it's important to mention that some of the frustrations can actually be overcome fairly easily. So when we register candidates at Comerford Group, one of the first things we do, if we can tell that they're just a bit peeved or narked where they're working, is we'll often kind of bat it back and be like, well, look, why are you looking to move? What's the problem? What's the issue? And if it's just money, which often it is, we normally encourage people to go back to line managers or their sales managers, and speak to them about getting pay rises, because there's nothing worse than doing a recruitment process and then obviously them being countered at the end of it, because effectively they don't really want to move, they just want a bit of a pay rise. So active candidates, for the most part, they turn up to interviews, they prepare for job interviews effectively because they actually want the jobs generally, and they're quite happy to enter into a proper recruitment process with several steps. Second type of candidate are passive. We have a lot of these registered on our books, people that are they're not necessarily looking for a job, but if the right kind of thing comes up, they'll have a chat with us. They're not normally unhappy, but as I said, they're registered, and if we give them a call, they're going to take that call from us. So passive candidates, again, they'll turn up for interviews on-site or off-site, generally off-site, but they're generally less flexible than someone who's actively looking, because obviously, they're not 100% sure they want to be doing anything. And they mainly differ from active candidates because they don't always sell themselves that well, which might sound a bit arse about face, but we do notice that, because it's almost like, well, you tell me why I should come and work for you. So if you and your team are involved in hiring, you need to be aware of these differences, because when you are doing that interview process, if you're not aware of who's an active versus a passive candidate, you could actually get your interview process wrong. Mike, you've listened to me rattle through that bit. What are your thoughts on active and passive candidates? If you start with active candidates.
Yeah, well, active candidates and predominantly people that we find on job boards. Yeah. So that can be your Indeed, your CV library, LinkedIn, where they actively apply. Those people that we predominantly see are mainly looking for a step up in money, especially what we're seeing kind of with the price of living and people looking for more. There's still people in organisations who are on low money to actually what's going out, and they're kind of going, I'm ready to move, and they will move quick. So a lot of the times, if we're just talking internal sales, business development, our kind of bread and butter positions that we have, we could have 5 or 6 of those positions in any location across the UK. So quickly, we can get candidates more than one interview. So they might have just applied for that position we've advertised, but then we've got a client of people where they're looking for that particular skill. So sometimes we've got candidates who are going to 6 interviews, and they will go, and then
can be in like a week.
And that can be really quick. And what you find is, as soon as they get an offer, don't complete their recruitment process. A lot of the times they're like, I've got my job, I've got my money, that's my preferred one, and they go. Passive candidates, a lot of the times it's where we've created the opportunity. That is just where we're outbound looking at where we pick up a job today. We're looking for someone who's sold stainless and aluminium bar, and we go to the people that we know who sell those products and we try and go and speak to them. So we're creating that opportunity to speak to the people that our clients require the skill for. At that point, if they're interested, we're speaking to them and they're kind of interested in finding out more, and they then become partial to the opportunity. They will go for a chat. But that interview process then has to be completely different, because if you just start in a first stage interview process, if they're not particularly that warm on it, they'll go. So your interview process for that is more selling the benefits of the business, talking about internal promotions, talking about, you know, the culture of your organisation. That might be flexible working. That might be that you do, you know, every year you have a party internally, events, you know, opportunities to go to expos in the UK, across mainland Europe, visiting supply chains. It's all the fluffy stuff that you need to be speaking to. And then when they leave, they need to be leaving thinking this is the place I want to work. And then the second stage interview almost becomes what you'd go is the first stage interview.
With passive as well, like we've been doing this as an agency for nearly 6 years now. So there's a lot of people that we've spoken to over a longer period of time, on and off. They might have been hiring managers themselves at businesses, or just people that have moved throughout their career. We've kind of kept contact with them. But some of the time we'll pick up certain vacancies and it matches what we know someone's looking to do. We've got plenty of people who are telling us, this is what I'd ideally like to do with my career. This is what I'd move for. This is where I'd actually relocate me and my family or myself to another place. And I think when we're picking up certain jobs, it's sometimes quite quick for us to make 2 or 3 calls, because these passive type of candidates, we might not have spoken to them about a job opportunity for 12 months or 18 months, but when the right opportunity comes up, they're ready. But as a business owner, if you're trying to get those type of candidates in, which you often do, because those are often some of the better candidates that are available in the market, as Mike was saying there, you've got to, you're trying to woo them a little bit. They're not just going to move, they're going to be a little bit more careful about making the right step.
And that's the thing there for people who are listening who are, you know, are partial as candidates. For us as a recruitment, when we're picking up positions, our first process is to go onto our CRM where we've got pre-registered candidates. Now, on those are people's salary expectations, where they're looking to locate to, what they're wanting to do within their career. So it's, if you're someone who's looking for an opportunity, or you often look at LinkedIn and think, God, how did that person get that job? A lot of the times it's come because they've already registered with a recruitment agency. Those opportunities come and recruiters just go straight to that talent pool they've already got. Because as soon as they start doing advertisement costs, working it, going through the whole thing, it's so much easier to get into your talent pool that you've already got pre-registered. That's like when clients come on to us, it's like, we're looking for this. Who do you have on your books at the moment? And that's the process. So if you're a partial candidate and you're like, really, I want my career to get to sales manager, general manager, or to then GM to MD, you need to be speaking to us as an agency, really, because we just create that many opportunities. And the busier you get, and as the business grows, not every opportunity gets advertised. Not every opportunity gets put on LinkedIn. A lot of the jobs that get done quick don't even make it onto the job boards, because you've already got a short list of candidates.
Absolutely. Well, let's get on to recruitment process. Slide 3. It's on the screen. At the end of 2023, we began working with a large automotive subcontractor. See if you can guess who it was. We noticed that the recruitment process that they had worked very well for temp staff, but for perm staff it was slower, and we weren't finding that the process was working that well for either us or the business that we were working with. So we had a chat with them and said, look, we rank clients like you're a new client with us, we rank them based on how you hire. So we were quite blunt with them really, and we said, look, there's several metrics we use, like how many people are involved in the hiring process, how quickly do we get feedback, do we get job specifications, do we get the role exclusively, what's the speed of the hiring process, and what's the onboarding process when people are starting as well, when we're speaking with candidates. And at that point, we felt that they weren't performing the way we would need them to perform for us to work with them. And I think we do this a lot of the time. When you first work with a new client, you have got no experience of any of these kind of metrics. So you have to kind of work with them and see how things kind of go. And it can sound negative the way I'm kind of talking now, but it's just business, isn't it? So as we get more experience with clients, we then work, or as an agency, we try and work with clients that work in a way that's similar to how we think a good recruitment process should work. And then failing that, if it doesn't, we just work with those kind of companies on an ad hoc basis. But we put in what we thought was a good hiring process, and we documented that for this client. And part of that, going back to what we were just saying about active and passive candidates, was putting the hiring team and the hiring managers within the process and giving them an idea of where the candidate was at each stage of the process, mentally where they were at kind of, we've spoken to them about a job. What are they thinking? Are they excited about it? What's their first stage interview, their family are being involved and people are talking about it. And I think, again, for companies, maybe companies that don't hire as often, it's probably worth thinking, or it's definitely worth thinking about the candidate journey in the process. Most metal engineering manufacturing businesses that we're dealing with, they've got strong processes operationally to make sure that things are coming in and going out the door effectively. But the recruitment process is not generally documented that well. So on your side, Mike, I've mentioned a couple of things there. What do you think is a good process?
I think this becomes a problem in all businesses, no matter the size. With people, especially with people where they've got, maybe a new manager who's never recruited before, and understanding, I think people, especially in recruitment, and a lot of candidates will be able to relate to this, is feeling like they're in a process, but they don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And when you're looking for work, especially if you're out of work, it becomes a really tedious process because you're applying for loads of jobs. You're getting the type of feedback you get back is, don't quite have industry experience, we've gone internal, there's someone who's got more industry experience, and it becomes such a tedious thing. So you've got to always respect that when you're recruiting, this is people's livelihoods. At the end of the day is we're not recruiting millionaires, we're recruiting people who are living day to day, week to week, month to month. It's how it's affecting them. Realistically, when you're recruiting, you should put the job out to whether an agency or if you're doing it yourselves. When your people are applying, you've got to be quickly shortlisting who you're wanting to be interviewing. Point of interviewing, you need to have a process then of going, right, once we've done the first interview, what does the first interview look like? What we're trying to gauge off the candidate. What's the goal? What's then our second interview, when those dates going to be? Do we have holidays coming up where the key hiring managers aren't going to be in for maybe 2 to 3 weeks, especially this time of year now? If it's going to be that you can't do a second interview for 2 to 3 weeks, don't start your process, because those candidates won't be available. If they're any good, or they're actively looking, there's no way a candidate's going to be on the job market in 3 weeks. It doesn't happen. I mean, we're filling positions now that can be, you don't even need a second interview. They've been done in a day. So, but you've got to know your process of first, second, then offer. And even the offer, if you're making an offer to someone on Monday, that offer needs to be out by Tuesday. Wednesday, the very latest, because as soon as it drags on, candidates start, thinking negatively. People who are in their network, friends, family, start going, but I don't think that's probably going to come. I wasn't that bothered. It's just a natural defensive mechanism to go, I'm not that bothered. But you've got to know a recruitment process.
Particularly with those passive candidates that we were just talking about, because
yeah.
passive, and I said it in this presentation, it's like they can switch from hot to cold in 24 hours.
Yeah.
And when they're gone, like you said, if someone's expecting an offer and they don't get an offer letter, they can just reject it.
And also with a passive candidate, if they're going through and they're looking for, let's just say 45k as an example, you can't be knocking them down, going, 40 or 42 or whatever. You've got to be like bang on the money. If you can't do bang on that money for a passive candidate, they're gone, because they're just like, I'll move, but everything's got to be on my terms as a candidate. And if it's not, you won't get them. Where an active candidate, bit more negotiation you can do. But the chances of an active candidate being more frustrated where it's just financial, again, you just risk the risk of a counter.
Mike and I have spoken to a couple of associations, and we're going to be doing some free to attend webinars towards the back end of this year. We've not got any dates in the diary as yet. So I believe we'll be doing these with potentially Alfed, NAS and the BSSA. It might be with other associations as well, but we'll get those advertised out. If you're interested in coming to one of those free to attend webinars, then by all means just reach out to Mike or the team, and we can get you pre-registered, and we'll give you the dates when those things happen in the future.
Do you suffer from any of these problems? Are you asking around your office trying to find a new supplier or source materials? Have you got aged or high-priced stock that you'd like to liquidate anonymously? Or would you like new business from customers that are guaranteed to pay you for your materials? If the answer to any of the above is yes, then you'll be pleased to know that the Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is sponsored by SteelBuy. SteelBuy are a digital platform revolutionising the way businesses trade metal products online. SteelBuy offers risk-free trading where sellers are guaranteed to be paid, and automated processing including certification, logistics and invoicing. The network of vetted buyers and sellers is continually growing, and it's all housed in an easy-to-use trading platform accessible on any device. The online business-to-business marketplace for products is rapidly gathering pace, and SteelBuy are ideally positioned to capture the changing demands of steel buyers. So check out SteelBuy today and be part of the future of metal trading. Now let's jump back into the podcast.
The next thing we wanted to talk about was the differences in process. Now, Mike's obviously mentioned a couple of these already. When I did this presentation about 7 weeks ago, we had a look at the previous 3 months and what placements we'd done as a business, just to highlight how many active candidates were getting jobs versus passive candidates, because we were talking about it and you've got no idea of a split. So active candidates from April to June 2024 for our business, that was 70%. So 70% of the jobs filled were active candidates. The other 30% was passive. Now, both Mike and I, we were a little bit surprised. We thought that it would be closer than that, probably more, 60, 40, 65, 35, something like that for active to passive. But what we had noticed was a lot of the jobs that we'd been filling between April and June were operational vacancies. So they were job-led, which tends to then get more active candidates coming through. And I think the wages of those jobs that we were placing were a little bit lower. So it just seemed to be that way. But it's not to say that the majority of the market is active. Historically, if we went further back, there's definitely months where we've had a very high proportion where jobs have come in and it's been passive candidates or people that we've had on the books that, as Mike was alluding to, we've just filled without even advertising the jobs. We've made a phone call, got someone in, done, one person finished. So depending on the circumstances of what you're hiring for and the type of people that are coming in to apply for those jobs, there are differences to the process and differences to the way that you need to hire for both. Now, I'm going to flip to passive candidates here, and I want to talk about how you would look to interview a passive candidate, because this definitely differs. When you might have an active candidate who is out of work, they can interview anytime, they can come in, meet you in those core hours. But for passive candidates, it definitely differs. Now, again, over the years, Mike, which type of companies or which companies have done well and how have they done that with passive candidates?
The companies who recruit really well are the ones who are so flexible around the candidates. And if the easier you can make it for a candidate to attend an interview, whether that's a quick telephone conversation, just to gather quickly if there's some kind of synergy between the two of you, a Teams or face-to-face. Now, my recommendation is always face-to-face. I think for both, especially candidates, to come across on Teams can be very different to kind of, I think in Teams it's so formal that you miss that kind of just the build-up conversation. What do you like doing? What you've been doing the weekend? Blah, blah, blah. But the people who recruit the best are people who will just, interview at any time, be really flexible, make it really easy. If that's meeting them close to their work and driving over, or meeting halfway, or meeting at pubs near their houses, whatever. They allow the candidate to dictate more than them going, no, I'm not staying after 5. If you're not flexible in your recruitment process for interviewing, you're just putting the type of talent you're going to see real small. First impression, especially with what you're saying there as a passive candidate, if you've got a hiring manager who goes, yeah, I can't interview, I can only interview in the time of the day. If they're passive, all you're doing really is getting the backup. I know they might be getting your backup, but really it's almost like, well, I can't do that. I'm not booking a day's holiday. I don't want to waste it. I don't want to use half a day. I don't want to rely to my employer because I'm not that unhappy. So all it does is you might miss the best person for the job because you're being unflexible. Especially now, I think employers sometimes try to hold back of like, well, this is what we're doing it. People don't want to work with it, then don't come. But it's like, it's such a narrow-minded way. We placed a candidate not so long ago, and the person who was the best person for the job, the hiring manager wouldn't. It's like basically these are the hours I can do, and these days. And if they can't do it, then they're not right for us. But that was the best person for the job, and that best person left and went to a competitor. And I'm like, the person they got had to be someone who wasn't in the industry. It become like you would basically the person they employed were people who were out of work, who wasn't even our sector. They actually damaged our recruiting process because they don't want to stay after 5 o'clock because it's like people say the amount of time stayed after work and they haven't turned up, or they're they're not the there wasn't any good or things like this. And it's like I always say to people dealing with Compton Group, it's like we don't have 10 people for a job. When you're coming on and you're based in Manchester and you're looking for someone with aluminium plate and bar experience, there's not 10 people. And if you're going into criteria, then I want this and that. Realistically, there might be 2 or 3.
Or 1.
Or 1, yeah. And that's sometimes what it's like. If it was like a warehouse operative with an overhead crane licence in Wednesbury, yeah, you can get 10. But really what you're paying an agency is not to see 10, to see the best 2 or 3 people.
The thing that I'd said when I was doing this presentation is, and you kind of touched on it a little bit in your what you were just saying, was it's important to sell the opportunity. And I think being flexible around people, particularly if they're the right kind of people for your business, is really important. But I think the mindset has got to be, irrespective if someone is what we're saying, like an active candidate who's looking, or a passive candidate who might be turned up at an interview, you need to sell the opportunity. It's not like when I was younger and I was going into the work environment, say, around the late 90s, early 2000s, where you just wanted a job. You didn't really care if it wasn't the best working environment, where you just needed a job. I think nowadays the candidates that are coming through, and also people that have been in the industry sector for a while, they're looking for a different reason to go to work. And I think unless your business kind of aligns to those, or you can be offering things like career progression, or a working environment where you feel like your voice is going to be heard and the things that you're going to be like saying that you'd like to do within the business are going to be listened to and pushed forward, I think you're going to struggle really. And I think that's like a real key thing when you're interviewing. It's not just a one-way interview. It's not just someone sat in front of you, you answer my questions. You've got to make your business look appealing. You've got to talk about the positives, the good things that happen within that business. Because again, otherwise you can potentially lose people, not because you haven't got a great business and a great opportunity for them, but the interview's too much on the terms of, I'm interviewing you and I'm not really bothered about what you want to be saying back. And I think that's another thing just to be aware of. It probably sounds obvious, but
Progression can mean so much more than just a title. It
yeah,
doesn't mean someone has to go from internal sales to business development to sales manager. You know, we work in a very small, business where it's pretty, there's no real structure of like where people can grow. But what you can do is development on sales training courses, recruitment. We've done so much to try and keep people engaged. And we're a small business, and I think sometimes businesses worry about, you hear a lot of going, oh, real good, but I think they get bored. We don't have enough going on. But it's like, well, how can you keep that person engaged? If you can't always offer them they're going to be the next MD, what you can do is look at develop them as people, in their skills, and pay for these training courses. I mean, training courses realistically aren't that expensive.
I also think that there's a fear that you're going to lose people within your business and you put in time and effort into them. But a lot of people, what we see when we're talking to people is people want the businesses that they work for to be successful. So I think if you're training them and you're almost training them like the old-fashioned way that apprenticeships used to work, we'll take on 10 apprentices, we're only going to take 2, the other 8 go to other people within the sector. But I think having people in where you're thinking, well, they might not stay with us, but we're going to get the best out of them while we're here, and we're going to give them all the opportunities while they're here. That then it's almost like the self-fulfilling prophecy that they actually then stay longer, they actually do better, and they do a better job for you and your business. So, free lunch every now and again always goes down a treat, but I do think not just putting someone and pigeonholing them into one thing on a desk or doing one particular role within an operational facility, even if that's got to be their job, multi-skill them, train them on the other things, and that's the kind of stuff that people want to know about. And that's the kind of stuff that you need to be telling people at the point that you're doing those interviews when you're first getting them in, so that they're already bought into you and your business.
Yeah, that's right. And especially for businesses sometimes, I think sometimes you don't realise what's going on in your business to actually how to promote it. So think about things of like where people have had self-development, where people have progressed internally through position, if that's happened within your business, which I'm sure it has. And that may be operationally from someone coming in from a warehouse operative who's gone into then the supervisor. There's going to be successes for your business where people have developed, and you've got to use those as success stories, not just with candidates coming through the door for interviews, but even your internal team, because sometimes people can always look at, you're always recruiting from the outside. They don't actually they forget so quickly about what you actually are doing as a business with people.
We touched on process. I've just got a couple of things here about process. Now, if you're looking to hire, again, it really should be really obvious here. If you've got a job vacancy, create a brief. We get it a lot where people say, I need this person, that's it. We get no brief, no nothing. Now, obviously, we're pretty skilled in the niche market we work in, but if you've got a job brief, it helps us and it helps the candidates because they can take a look at it before they turn up. So if you've got a job vacancy, create a brief. I think once you start then seeing candidates, to review them and make some notes after they've been in, so that you can then manage that process. But at the point that they come back for second interviews, a lot of the time people come in for second interviews and feel like they've basically just had the first interview a second time. So it's almost like, well, what are you getting out of them by coming back that second time? And if it's just because they need to meet other people, you don't need to just redo the interview a second time and make sure they're ticking the same boxes. But I think if you can have a process where you're booking a first interview in, you're telling them at first interview, this is the next step, this is how long it will take, this will be the process. If you are then successful, this will be when your offer comes out, this is how long it's going to take for you to start. If you can just manage that expectation level of the candidate through that process, you're going to get a better return. And as Mike was saying about speed of hire, the biggest issue we are seeing within the metal engineering manufacturing space at the moment isn't your competitors down the road who are doing the same things as you. It's companies outside of the sector that are looking at the talent that we've got in this sector and looking at that skill set they've got and going, right, how can we use that in our sector? And those people leaving and moving across. And that's one of the things that I think good businesses in our sector are realising, that speed of hire is important. And we're not just saying speed of hire because we want to get paid as an agency to push people through quicker. It's because if you're slow and your process isn't, documented the way I've just suggested, you will lose people. It's not always to your competitors. It could be to anyone that's looking for people with a skill set, because there is a shortage. There's a shortage of people, there's a shortage of labour, and there's a shortage of talent, and that's not going to go away. It's not, and I can't see it going away for a huge period of time. It's really going to be a problem.
The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is sponsored by TW Metals. TW Metals are a stockholder and distributor of nickel alloy, aluminium, titanium and stainless steel products in a range of forms including tube, bar, pipe, extrusion, as well as sheet and plates. They have sites located in the UK, Europe, the USA and Southeast Asia, and are the largest supplier of aerospace tubes globally. With a whole host of accreditations and in-house processing capabilities, they are the first choice for OEMs, tier ones, fabricators and engineering companies across the world, and they're easy to deal with. I worked with them for many years, so I can recommend them. For more details, check out their website or even give them a call to chat about your requirements. Now let's get back to the pod.
There is a shortage of people. And the amount of times people talk about, I just want to compare them. But if they're good, you got to take them. People aren't like going out thinking, I'm going to buy a car. You know, when you're buying a car, you want to test drive it and you go and watch it. You'll still come back. They just manufacture you one. It's simple. With people, it's like if you've got the right person, you've got to act. You've got to do it. And this is the thing sometimes where when people are recruiting, they've got the right person and then they mess around with the offer. They mess around with like, or I'll try and get it on the cheap, and it's like, right, so you're after something, and you always forget what that person's going to bring to your business. You know, the thing of talking about, oh God, it's a lot of money, it's changed now. An entry-level role is 25k.
For anything?
For anything. So it's like when you start thinking about salespeople who can bring business and develop it, you know, it's like sometimes we pick up roles and it's like internal sales, 28k. You think, well, minimum wage is 25. If you're valuing a niche skill in a certain part of the country for 3k. Your wages are there, so you have to look at it when you're looking at wages and go, right, if the minimum is 25, what do I value the skill for my business of what they can bring? So it's like, if it's a 40k role, then you've got to look at it and go, that skill's worth 15k to me. And that's the way you've got to look at it now. And I think so many times, especially a lot of senior people in our sector, they remember the times what they were having to do at that particular time to be earning 35, 40k. But that's gone. And we either jump on board and just embrace new people coming in at reasonably high salaries, or we look at people who are doing certain positions and pay it, or you don't get involved in it. It's one or the other.
I moved on at this point. I gave a tip because I felt like I'd been bashing people by this stage of this presentation. So this is actually your tip, Mike.
Yeah.
Mike told me this and then I told everyone and said it was mine.
Don't blame you.
But today I've said it's yours, so
Yeah, thanks, mate.
well done.
Thanks, mate.
So the tip you gave me, you said, people are typically seeking two things when they move: career progression and more money, typically. But generally they want a bit of both, particularly in their early careers. So a client of ours, they had a candidate that was coming in as a sales manager, and that candidate wanted 50k. That was the salary they wanted, 50k and a car, plus a target and bonuses and stuff like that. Having spoke with the candidate at length, they knew that their real goal was actually that they wanted to become a sales director. Yeah, they wanted this particular role, but they'd ask the right questions. What do you want to be doing in 5 years, 10 years? What's your goal? What's your life goal? What's your business goal? How can that all work together? Those are good questions to ask in an interview. The client asked the following question in the second interview, and they said, words to this effect: we understand that the next career goal is for you to become a sales director. So our question to you is this: why aren't you applying for those roles now? So the candidate explains that they weren't at the level and that they'd need to have training or coaching, or they'd need to be mentored into that position. So the client said to them, we will put you on a 1-year management training cost at our cost. We'll pay for this, but we're going to pay you £40,000 a year rather than the 50. We're still going to give you your bonuses, we're still going to give you your car, the other things. But we'll give you a roadmap that at the end of the year, you'll be earning the 50k that you've asked for, but you'll also have had the training to get you to the next level in your career, whether it's with us or whether it's somewhere else. Because we think that that training is worth the 10 grand. And you're going to get the 10 grand anyway, but you've got to do your 12 months. We've got to see it from you as well. So the candidate, he did have other opportunities that were around the money that he was looking for, but he took that job And he took that job because it gave him the ability to get to where he wanted in his career. And I think going back to what I was saying right at the start there is career progression and money. And there's a rub between the two of like, what is the most important? And for that particular candidate, the potential career progression was worth more than the cash. And I think if you can ask the right questions and understand the candidate when you're looking to hire, and you understand what their real goals are, not just I want a job, maybe I could have your job, what do you really want to be doing and how is that going to affect you longer term? You can then make proper offers, which is what this particular client did, that align to what that person wants to do. It's not about lowballing still. You've still got to offer people the right cash, but you can make an offer that, why would they look elsewhere? And I think if certain candidates might have 2, 3, 4, 5 opportunities potentially, some within this sector, some elsewhere, you need to make sure that your opportunity is the opportunity that that candidate wants. So without banging you over the head with it, if you can understand what people need, you can make offers that reflect what the candidate needs. And that was your tip that you told me. And after I gave the presentation, quite a few people came and said, that was a good tip. And I said, yeah, that was my tip, that was.
No, good tip.
Good tip, do you think?
Yeah, it was, yeah. Yeah, I do think people need to really understand the main motivation. And a lot of times people don't get the real people they want is because they don't really quite understand the candidate of what they're looking for. And like I said before, when you're talking there about money, you've got to be making the right money. I think sometimes people look at people when the candidates get presented, where it's what they're looking for, then you've got the skill sets of what they've got, and they look at it and think, yeah, he's probably asking that, but I could probably get them for less. And in this market, you can't. Either entertain it or don't. Because the only thing you're wasting is your own time and the candidate's time.
And when they're gone as well, like you burn them, then they won't come back. It's like that's their impression of your business.
The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is brought to you by Compton Group, a recruitment agency operating in the metal, manufacturing and engineering sectors. With a large, engaged network of candidates and clients, we help businesses make great hires in sales, operational, technical, quality and managerial roles, as well as assisting people in their careers by matching their unique skills and aspirations to businesses that are hiring. Having worked with more than 200 niche businesses since 2019, Compton Group have become the go-to recruitment partner for many of our industry's leading names. So talk to us about your next career move or let us work with you on your business's next hire. Compton Group, powering employment in the metal, manufacturing and engineering sectors.
The 4 things I said at the end here, just to take away from this particular presentation, obviously what Mike and I have been talking about in this kind of bonus podcast, is make sure your hiring managers are aware of the difference between an active and a passive candidate. Talk about that, and when you're looking to hire, either speak to us as an agency or if you're doing your own recruitment process, look at the difference between the types of people that are turning up and be aware of the slightly different ways you might need to deal with an active and a passive candidate. Momentum in a process is fundamentally important, and we didn't really talk about it that much in this, but having a process and letting the candidate understand that process is key, and not stopping the process, because if it slows down, particularly as I mentioned with passive candidates, they can just drop off and they're gone. Make offers that match the goals of the candidates that are sat in front of you, and make sure you articulate these either over the phone or in your offer letters, so that when that person is reading it, it's not just generic, it's an offer letter that is specific for that person that's looking to potentially work with you. And the last thing is, with there being a bit of a shortage of people, you might need to look at people that are outside the industry. You might need to look at people that don't have a metal engineering fabrication background in your specific sector, because if you're looking for talent to come in, other business sectors are looking at our talent and seeing their skills can transfer. And I think there's too many businesses in our sector that are looking at someone who's done sales of something else and they're like, well, they're not selling our product. And when it's a nominal bore tube, it might be bar, OD, wall thickness, a tolerance, a bevel. You know, look, you can learn. We all learn this stuff. It's not
and
that
the key
difficult.
part of that is, as well, is what you're seeing now is when people are leaving our sector, they're not the junior people. We're talking people are leaving this sector to go and work in other sectors who are earning what we class in our sector as good money. And there's really good people on the market who speak to us as an agency every week who are earning a certain type of money that we know our clients won't pay because they don't have metal experience, but they are exceptional salespeople. And I can't think of doing this now for nearly 6 years of a time that we've placed someone who's new into the sector on big money. And that attitude's got to change, because really good salespeople can sell anything and they can learn and develop, but you've got to have a really good onboarding process. And this is where you've got to use associations to learn metal knowledge. You know, get them around really good training buddies who can develop them. But if you want really good salespeople, especially in the market where it's hard at the moment, you need people who are sales weapons. And those people, we've got to get into the industry and not worry about what it costs, because we've got, you know, we're trying to bring people in at a junior level, and we're having that traditional route of where they come in on a low salary, we learn them, then develop. You could get really good salespeople, but you've got to be paying what you pay someone who knows the industry.
This type of topic that we're talking about here, it can definitely come across, like I can hear it in how I'm talking and you're talking. It can sound preachy, like we're telling you what to do, but we're having these conversations every day, over and over again, and to be able to do it long form like we've done here for, say, 30 minutes or so that you might be listening to in the car or at home or sat in the bath like I do when I'm listening to a pod. We're only doing it because we think it's valuable information. When I've been presenting at a few of these different associations, giving these kind of topics and these kind of talks, I've had really good conversations afterwards. So if you're looking
really, you do because you care, don't you?
Yeah, of course.
When you look at it, it's like there's not many people who can recruit properly. And these are issues every business is having.
Yeah.
Even if you've got using like certain recruitments and you know, we speak to companies sometimes like, oh yeah, we've got our preferred suppliers, but it's like, if they can't find the skill, everyone's having this problem. And it's so frustrating when your team's lean because you're trying to attract skill, but you have to recreate something.
But yeah, for candidates, you know, people that are looking for next step up in their career, or just want to have a conversation with us, we're going to be changing a few things with the business. The website will be changing quite soon. You can book slots in with us to just have short calls, or do these kind of candidate calls that have been really successful for us recently, where we're just trying to ascertain what it is that you want to do with your career. And then obviously, as those jobs come over our desk, we can kind of match you up to them. But for clients that are looking to make hires or might be having some of the problems that we're alluding to, then by all means, speak to us about what are the plans, what are the things that you're doing, where are the shortages going to be, where are the issues that you can foresee over the next, say, 6, 12, 18, 24 months within your business. And obviously, if we know about those, we can find those kind of people. And as they become available, we can make sure that we're presenting them to you. So thanks for listening to this bonus podcast. We've got one more of these to come out before the end of the season. And then we'll be kind of running into season 4, which I guess will probably start coming out in 2025, I think. Thanks to the sponsors.
Yeah, TW Metals,
Steel By,
and Compton Group.
And we'll catch up with you next Tuesday.